Shalom, and welcome to Shalom Sleep, a place where whispered Bible stories bring shalom to your heart and mind. I'm Luca, your storyteller, and tonight we will journey through the book of Bereshit Genesis, from the creation of the world to the blessings of Yaakov. These stories are spoken softly, with care and reverence to bring you into rest. As you listen, let your mind wander through the ancient lands of Scripture, where Yahweh's presence filled the earth, where faith was tested, and where His promises never failed. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let His word bring you into rest. Now, let's begin. In the very beginning, there was nothing, no sun, no sky, no trees, no people, only Yahweh. Then Yahweh spoke. His words were powerful. Yahweh said, Yehi Yor, let there be light. And suddenly, light filled the darkness. Yahweh separated the light from the dark. He called the light Yom, day, and the darkness Lila, night. And so, the very first day was made. On the second day, Yahweh spoke again. He stretched out the Shamayim, the great sky above us. He separated the waters, placing some below and some high above in the clouds. The sky was soft and endless, ready for all the wonders Yahweh would soon place in it. Then Yahweh said, Let the waters gather together. The waters obeyed, forming great seas, and dry land appeared. He called the land Eretz, earth, and the waters Yamim, seas. But Yahweh wasn't done. He made the land burst with life, trees with sweet fruit, flowers of every color, and soft green grass. The world was beginning to bloom. Then Yahweh placed lights in the sky. He made the Shemesh, the sun, to shine brightly during the day, and the Yariach, the moon, to glow softly at night. He sprinkled the heaven with twinkling kochavim, stars, to light up the dark. On the fifth day, Yahweh filled the seas with life. Great fish, tiny fish, swimming creatures of all kinds. He made playful dolphins, gentle whales, and colorful fish. Then He filled the sky with flying creatures, birds of every shape and song, soaring high in the heavens. Now, Yahweh was ready for something special. He made behemoth, animals, mighty lions, gentle lambs, and every creature that walks the earth. But His greatest creation was yet to come. Yahweh said, Let us make man in our image. And so He formed the first man, Adam, from the dust of the ground, and He breathed life into him. Then from Adam He made Chava, Eve, the very first woman. Yahweh loved them, and He blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and care for it. After everything was made, Yahweh saw that it was tov miyod, very good. So on the seventh day, He rested. He set apart this day as Shabbat, a special, holy day of rest and joy. And so, Yahweh made the whole world with just His voice. After Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, after He shaped the mountains, filled the seas, and placed the stars in the sky, He made a special home, a perfect garden. It was called Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Inside, the trees grew tall and full of life. Sweet fruit hung from the branches. Cool rivers flowed gently through the land. Birds sang in the skies, and animals roamed freely, never afraid. And in the middle of the garden, Yahweh placed two special trees. One was Etz HaChaim, the tree of life. Whoever ate from it would live forever. The other was Etz HaDa'at Tov, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Then Yahweh formed a man. He took dust from the ground, shaped it with His hands, and breathed life into him. The man's name was Adam. Yahweh placed Adam in Gan Eden, and told him, "You may eat from every tree in the garden, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for on the day you eat of it, you will surely die." Adam cared for the garden, tending to the trees, naming the animals, and walking with Yahweh, but something was missing. Adam was alone, so Yahweh caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. And while he slept, Yahweh took from Adam's side and formed a woman, Hava. She was made to be his perfect companion. When Adam saw her, he said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Adam and Hava lived in peace, surrounded by beauty. They walked with Yahweh in the cool of the day, never afraid, never worried. They had everything they needed. Yahweh had given them life, love, and a home filled with shalom. They lived in peace, surrounded by beauty. The trees provided food, the rivers flowed with fresh water, and the animals lived in harmony. Yahweh walked with them in the cool of the day. But there was one tree, the Etz Hadat Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And one command Yahweh had told them, "You may eat from every tree in the garden, but do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For on the day you eat of it, you will surely die." But someone was watching, someone who did not love Yahweh, the Nachash, the serpent. It was the most cunning of all the creatures Yahweh had made, and it spoke to Hava, whispering lies. "Did Elohim really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Hava answered, "We may eat from the trees, but Elohim said we must not eat from the tree in the middle of the garden, or touch it, or we will die." The serpent's voice was smooth, tempting. "You will not surely die," it hissed. "Elohim knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open. You will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil." Hava looked at the tree. The fruit was beautiful. It looked delicious. And the serpent's words stirred something inside her. She reached out and took a bite. And then she gave some to Adam, and he ate as well. In that moment, everything changed. Their eyes were opened, and they knew they were naked. Shame filled their hearts. They sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. Then they heard the voice of Yahweh. He was walking in the garden. Fear gripped them, and they hid among the trees. "Adam," Yahweh called, "where are you?" Trembling, Adam answered, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked." "Who told you that you were naked?" Yahweh asked. "Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?" Adam's voice shook. "The woman you gave me, she gave me the fruit, and I ate." Hava lowered her head. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." Yahweh turned to the serpent. "Because you have done this, you are cursed. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life." Then, to Hava, he said, "You will have pain in childbirth, but your children will fill the earth." And to Adam, he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and eaten from the tree, the ground is cursed because of you. By hard work, you will eat from it all your life." Then Yahweh made them garments of animal skin and covered them. But they could no longer stay in Gan Eden. Yahweh placed cherubim, mighty angels, and a flaming sword at the entrance, guarding the way to the Etz HaChaim, the tree of life. And Adam and Hava left the garden, their home. But Yahweh was not done with them. One day he would make a way to bring his people back to him. Life outside the garden was harder. The ground no longer gave its fruit so easily. Thorns and thistles covered the land, but Yahweh had not forgotten them. In time, Hava gave birth to a son. His name was Cain. Later she gave birth again to another son, Abel. Cain and Hevel grew up, learning to care for the land. Cain worked the soil, planting and harvesting crops. Hevel became a shepherd, tending the sheep. One day, they both brought an offering to Yahweh. Cain brought fruits from the land he had grown. Hevel brought the best of his flock, the firstborn lambs, pure and without blemish. Yahweh looked up on Hevel's offering with favor, but he did not accept Cain's offering. Cain's heart grew dark with anger. Yahweh spoke to him. "Why are you angry, Cain? Why has your face fallen? If you do what is right, you will be accepted. But if you do not, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." But Cain did not listen. His heart burned with jealousy. One day, Cain said to his brother, "Come, let's go out to the field." And while they were there, Cain struck his brother, and Hevel was gone. Then Yahweh spoke, "Cain, where is your brother Hevel?" Cain lowered his eyes and said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" But Yahweh's voice was firm. "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood." Cain trembled. "My punishment is too great to bear. Whoever finds me will kill me." But Yahweh, in his mercy, placed a sign on Cain, so that no one would harm him. And Cain left, wandering east, away from the presence of Yahweh. But Yahweh had not forgotten Adam and Hava. In time, he gave them another son, named Seth. Many generations had passed since Adam and Chava. People filled the earth, but their hearts had turned away from Yahweh. Violence, wickedness, and corruption covered the land. Yahweh looked upon his creation, and his heart was grieved. But there was one man who still walked with Yahweh. His name was Noah. Noach was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. He listened to Yahweh and obeyed his voice. And Yahweh said to Noach, "The earth is filled with violence, and I will bring an end to it. But you, build for yourself a tiva, an ark. Make it of gopher wood, and cover it inside and out with pitch. You shall make it with 3 levels, and a door on its side. For behold, I will bring a Mabul, a great flood, to cover the earth. But I will establish my covenant with you. You and your family shall enter the teva, and you shall bring 2 of every kind of animal with you." Noach listened, and Noach obeyed. He worked for many years, building the teva just as Yahweh commanded. The people around him laughed, mocked, and did not believe. But Noach kept building. When the time came, Yahweh told Noach, "Enter the teva, you and your household." And so, Noach, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Japheth, and their wives entered the teva. The animals came just as Yahweh had said, 2 of every kind and 7 pairs of clean animals. They entered, and Noach brought them inside. Then Yahweh himself shut the door. The skies darkened, the wind howled, and then the rain began to fall. Drops turned into streams, streams turned into rivers, rivers turned into raging waters. The fountains of the deep burst forth. The heavens poured down. For 40 days and 40 nights, the Mabul covered the earth. The waters rose higher and higher, covering even the tallest mountains. Every living thing outside the teva perished, but inside, Noach and his family were safe. And then, silence. The rain stopped. The waters began to recede. And after many months, the teva came to rest upon Har Ararat, the mountains of Ararat. Noach opened a window and sent out a Orev, a raven. It flew back and forth but found no place to rest. Then he sent out a Yonah, a dove, but it returned, for the earth was still covered in water. 7 days later, he sent the Yonah again, and this time it returned with an aleh zayet, an olive leaf in its beak. The earth was drying, and finally Yahweh spoke to Noach. "Come out of the teva, you and all who are with you." Noach and his family stepped onto dry ground once more. The animals ran free, the sky was clear, and Noach built an altar to Yahweh, offering thanks. Yahweh saw the offering and made a covenant. He set a keshet, a rainbow, in the sky as a sign of his promise. "Never again will I destroy the earth with a flood." And so the rainbow remains, a sign of Yahweh's everlasting promise. After the great flood, Noach and his family began to repopulate the earth. Their children and their children's children spread across the land, but they all spoke the same lashon, language. As the people journeyed east, they found a vast plain in the land of Shinar. It was wide, open, and full of rich earth. They decided to settle there. But soon, the people's hearts became proud. One day, they said to one another, "Come, let us make levanim, bricks, and build ourselves a migdal, a great tower that reaches the heavens. Let us make a shem, a name, for ourselves, so that we are not scattered across the earth." They worked together, molding bricks, stacking them higher and higher. They believed their strength, their wisdom, and their unity could make them like Elohim. But Yahweh was watching. He looked down from the heavens and saw their pride. Yahweh said, "Behold, the people are united, and they all have one lashon. Nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand one another." And so Yahweh came down, and the people's tongues were changed. One man spoke, but his neighbor could no longer understand. Workers called for bricks, but their words made no sense. Confusion filled the city. The builders could no longer work together. They could not finish their tower. So the people scattered, just as Yahweh had willed. The great tower remained unfinished, and the place was called Babel. Babel because there Yahweh confused the language of all the earth. And from that day forward, the people spread out, forming different nations. They speak in different tongues, filling the world just as Yahweh had commanded from the beginning. And so many years had passed. The people of the earth had spread far and wide, forming great cities and nations. But among them, in the land of Ur-Kasdim, Ur of the Chaldeans, there lived a man named Avraham. Avraham was different from the people around him. While others worshipped false gods, Avraham believed in the one true Elohim, Yahweh. And one day, Yahweh spoke to Avraham, "Go forth from your land, from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. And through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." Avraham listened, and Avraham obeyed. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their belongings, and set out on a journey, not knowing where Yahweh would lead them. Through valleys and deserts, across rivers and mountains, Avraham followed Yahweh's voice. At last they came to Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan. Yahweh spoke again, "To your offspring I will give this land." And there, in that land, Avraham built an altar to Yahweh, worshipping him. But the journey was not over. Avraham and Sarai traveled on, facing hardships and trials. They were strangers in a foreign land, but Yahweh's promise remained. One night, Yahweh led Avraham outside and said, "Look up at the Kochavim, the stars. Can you count them? So shall your descendants be." And Avraham believed Yahweh's words. Because of his faith, Yahweh counted him as righteous. Even though Avraham and Sarai were old, even though they had no children yet, Yahweh's promise was certain. Many years had passed since Yahweh first called Avraham to leave his home and follow him. But Avraham and his wife Sarai were still waiting for the child Yahweh had promised. One day, Yahweh appeared to Avraham again. He said, "No longer shall your name be Avram, but Avraham, for I have made you the father of many nations. And your wife shall no longer be called Sarai, but Sarah. I will bless her, and she will give you a son." Avraham laughed, for he was very old. "Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90, bear a son?" But Yahweh's promise was true. And one day, as Avraham sat at the entrance of his tent, he saw 3 men approaching. He hurried to greet them and prepared food for them under the shade of the great Elonim, oak trees. One of them said, "By this time next year, Sarah will have a son." Inside the tent, Sarah heard these words, and she laughed. "How can I have a child when I am so old?" But Yahweh asked, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for Yahweh?" And just as he had said, the time came. Sarah gave birth to a son, and they named him Yitzchak, Isaac, which means laughter. Sarah said, "Elohim has made me laugh, and everyone who hears will laugh with me." The child grew, bringing joy to his parents, and Avraham knew Yahweh's promise had come true. For through Yitzchak, the covenant would continue, and through his descendants, Yahweh's great plan would unfold. So Yahweh had kept his promise. Avraham and Sarah had waited many years for a child, and now their son Yitzchak, Isaac, had been born. Yitzchak grew into a strong and joyful young boy. He was the child of promise, the one through whom Yahweh's covenant would continue. But one day, Yahweh spoke to Avraham and asked him to do something very difficult. "Take your son, your only son, Yitzchak, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as an olah, a burnt offering, on one of the mountains I will show you." Avraham's heart was heavy, but he trusted Yahweh. Early the next morning, he gathered wood for the offering, took Yitzchak, and set out for the mountain. For 3 days they traveled. Finally, they reached the place Yahweh had chosen. Avraham told his servants, "Stay here. Yitzchak and I will go worship, and we will return to you." Then he placed the wood on Yitzchak's back, and together they climbed the mountain. As they walked, Yitzchak looked up at his father and asked, "Avi, my father, I see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb, for the offering?" Avraham looked at his son and said, "Yahweh Yireh, Yahweh will provide the lamb, my son." They reached the top of the mountain. Avraham built an altar and placed the wood upon it. Then, with a heavy heart, he bound Yitzchak and laid him on the altar. He raised the knife, but suddenly, "Avraham, Avraham!" a voice from the heavens called out. Avraham stopped. "Do not lay a hand on the boy, for now I know that you fear Elohim, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Avraham looked up, and there, caught in the thicket, was a ram Yahweh had provided. Avraham took the ram and offered it in place of his son. And so Avraham named that place Yahweh Yireh, Yahweh will provide. Then Yahweh spoke again, "Because you have obeyed my voice and not withheld your son, I will bless you greatly. Your descendants will be as numerous as the Kokavim, the stars in the sky, and as the Chol, the sand on the shore. And through your offspring, all nations will be blessed." Avraham and Yitzchak returned home, and Yahweh's promise remained. For one day, another father would offer his beloved son. But this time, there would be no ram to take his place. Avraham was now old. Yahweh had blessed him in all things, and he knew the promise must continue through his son, Yitzchak. But Yitzchak had no wife, so Avraham called for his most trusted servant and said, Swear to me that you will not take a wife for my son from the women of Canaan. Instead, go to my homeland, to my family, and find a wife for Yitzchak." The servant bowed and said, "What if the woman refuses to come with me?" Avraham answered, "Yahweh, Elohim of the heavens, will send his malach, his angel, before you, and you will find a wife for my son." So the servant took 10 camels, gifts, and supplies, and journeyed to Aram Naharaim, the land of Abraham's family. When he reached a well outside the city, he stopped to rest. He prayed, "Yahweh, Elohim of my master Avraham, let the woman who comes to draw water and offers to give drink to my camels also be the one you have chosen for Yitzchak." Before he finished praying, a young woman named Rebecca, came to the well. She was kind and beautiful, and when the servant asked for water, she quickly lowered her jar and gave him a drink. Then she said, "I will also draw water for your camels until they have finished drinking." The servant watched in amazement. Could this be the one? He took out a gold ring and bracelets and asked, "Whose daughter are you? Is there room in your father's house for us to stay?" Rivka smiled. "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, Abraham's brother, and yes, there is room for you to stay." The servant bowed low. "Baruch Yahweh, blessed be Yahweh, Elohim of my master Avraham, for he has led me to my master's family." Rivka ran home to tell her family. Her brother Lavan came out to meet the servant and invited him inside. That evening, the servant said, "Yahweh has guided me here to find a wife for my master's son. If you will show kindness, let me know, so I may take her to him." Rivka's father and brother answered, "This is from Yahweh. Let Rivka go with you." Then the servant gave gifts of silver, gold, and fine clothing to Rivka and her family. The next morning, they asked Rivka, "Will you go with this man?" She answered, "I will go." So she left her home and traveled with the servant toward the land of Yitzchak. One evening, as they neared their destination, Yitzchak was walking in the fields, meditating. When Rivka saw him from a distance, she asked, "Who is that man walking toward us?" The servant said, "That is my master Yitzchak." Rivka covered herself with her veil. Yitzchak welcomed her, and they became husband and wife. And Yitzchak loved her deeply. After Yitzchak and Rivka were married, many years passed. Rivka longed for a child, and Yitzchak prayed to Yahweh, and Yahweh answered. Rivka became pregnant, but something felt different. Something stirred inside her. The babies inside her struggled with one another. She prayed, "Yahweh, why is this happening?" And Yahweh answered, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples will come from you. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." The time came for her to give birth. The firstborn was red and covered in hair, like a cloak. They named him Esau. Then his brother was born, grasping Esau's heel. They named him Yaakov, Jacob. The boys grew, and they were very different. Esau became a strong hunter, a man of the fields. Yaakov was quiet and dwelled in tents. Yitzchak loved Esau because he brought him wild game, but Rivka loved Yaakov. One day, Esau came in from the fields, exhausted and hungry. Yaakov was cooking a pot of dashim, red lentil stew. Esau said, "Give me some of that red stew. I am starving." Yaakov looked at him and said, "Sell me your Bekorah, your birthright, first." Esau laughed. "What good is a birthright if I am dying of hunger?" So Esau swore an oath and sold his birthright to Yaakov. Yaakov gave him the stew, and Esau ate and left, not realizing the value of what he had given away. Years passed. Yitzchak became old and blind. One day he called Esau and said, "My son, I do not know the day of my death. Take your bow and hunt some wild game for me, and prepare my favorite meal, so that I may bless you before I die." But Rivka had been listening. She remembered Yahweh's words. "The older will serve the younger." She called Yaakov and said, "Go quickly. Bring me 2 young goats. I will prepare your father's favorite meal, and you will bring it to him to receive the blessing." Yaakov hesitated. "But Esau is hairy, and I am smooth. If my father touches me, he will know I am deceiving him, and I will be cursed." Rivka said, "Let the curse be on me, my son. Do as I say." She prepared the meal, placed Esau's clothes on Yaakov, and covered his hands and neck with goat skins to feel like Esau. Then Yaakov entered his father's tent. "Who are you, my son?" Yitzchak asked. Yaakov said, "I am Esau, your firstborn." Yitzchak reached out and felt him. "The voice is Yaakov's, but the hands are Esau's." Then he ate the meal and said, "Come closer and kiss me, my son." Yaakov leaned in, and Yitzchak smelled the scent of Esau's clothing. Then Yitzchak blessed him, saying, "May Yahweh give you the dew of the heavens and the richness of the earth. May nations serve you. May your mother's sons bow to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you." Just as Yaakov left, Esau returned. He prepared the meal and brought it to his father. "Rise, my father, and eat, that you may bless me." Yitzchak trembled. "Who are you?" "I am Esau, your firstborn." Yitzchak shook with fear. "Who was just here? I have already blessed him, and he will be blessed indeed." Esau cried out, "Bless me too, my father." Yitzchak said, "Your brother came deceitfully and has taken your blessing." Esau wept, "Have you only one blessing? Bless me too, my father." But Yitzchak answered, "You will live away from the richness of the earth. You will serve your brother, but one day you will break free." Esau burned with anger. He said in his heart, "When my father dies, I will kill Yaakov." Rivka heard of this and told Yaakov, "Flee to my brother Lavan in Haran. Stay there until Esau's anger fades." Yaakov left his home, and his journey was just beginning. His brother Esau was filled with anger, and Rivka had sent him away to stay with her brother Lavan in the land of Haran. On his journey, Yaakov stopped for the night. He took a stone, placed it under his head, and lay down to sleep. That night he had a dream. A sulam, a ladder, reached from the earth to the heavens, and Malachim, angels, were ascending and descending upon it. Then Yahweh stood above it and said, "I am Yahweh, Elohim of Avraham and Yitzchak. I will give this land to you and your descendants. Your offspring will be like the chal, the dust of the earth, and through you all nations will be blessed. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go and bring you back to this land. I will not leave you." Yaakov awoke, trembling. "Surely Yahweh is in this place, and I did not know it." He took the stone he had slept on, set it up as a pillar, and named the place Beit-El, House of Elohim. Then he continued his journey. When he came near Haran, he saw a well in the field, where shepherds were gathering with their flocks. A large stone covered the well's mouth. Yaakov asked them, "Do you know Lavan, the son of Nahor?" They answered, "Yes, we know him. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep." Yaakov turned, and there, coming toward him, was Rachel. She was a shepherdess, leading her father's flock. When Yaakov saw her, his heart was moved. He went to the well, rolled away the stone, and watered her sheep. Then he kissed her and wept. Yaakov told Rachel who he was, that he was Rivka's son, her father's relative. She ran to tell her father Lavan, and and he welcomed Yaakov into his home. After staying with them for a month, Lavan said, "Should you work for me for nothing, just because you are my relative? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now, Lavan had 2 daughters. The elder was Leah, with soft, tender eyes. The younger was Rachel, beautiful in form and appearance. And Yaakov loved Rachel. So he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your daughter Rachel." Lavan agreed, and Yaakov worked for 7 years. But because of his love for Rachel, it felt to him like only a few days. At last the time came. Yaakov said to Lavan, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed." But Lavan was a trickster. That night, instead of bringing Rachel, he gave Yaakov Leah. When morning came, Yaakov saw what had happened. He said to Lavan, "Why have you deceived me?" Lavan answered, "It is not our custom to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete this bridal week with Leah, and then you may also have Rachel, if you work for me another 7 years." And Yaakov agreed. After the week was complete, he married Rachel, but he served Lavan another 7 years. Yaakov had worked for many years in the house of Lavan. He had married Leah and Rachel, and Yahweh blessed him with many children. Each child was special, for one day they would become the 12 tribes of Israel. The firstborn was Reuben, son of Leah. Then came Shimon, Simeon, Levi, and Yehuda, Judah. Rachel had no children, and she was filled with sorrow. So she gave her maidservant Bilhah to Yaakov, and through her he had 2 more sons, Dan and Naphtali. Leah also gave her maidservant Zilpah to Yaakov, and she bore 2 sons, Gad and Asher. Then Yahweh remembered Leah again, and she bore 2 more sons, Issachar, and Zebulun. At last Yahweh opened Rachel's womb, and she gave birth to a son. She named him Joseph. Many years later, as Yaakov and his family journeyed, Rachel gave birth to 1 more son. But the birth was hard, and Rachel's life faded away. Before she passed, she named the child Ben-Oni, meaning son of my sorrow. But Yaakov called him Benjamin, son of my right hand. 12 sons, 12 tribes. Each would grow into a great people, carrying the promise of Yahweh. And from them, a nation was born. Yaakov loved all of his children, but among them, he had a special love for Joseph, the son of Rachel. He gave Yosef a beautiful kedonet pasim, a coat of many colors. But his brothers were jealous. One night, Yosef had a dream. In the dream, he and his brothers were in the field, binding sheaves of grain. Then Yosef's sheaf stood tall, while the sheaves of his brothers bowed down before him. The next morning, Yosef told them about the dream. His brothers were angry. "Do you think you will reign over us?" they said. But then Yosef had another dream. This time the Shemesh, the sun, the Yarech, the moon, and 11 Kokhavim, 11 stars, all bowed before him. When Yosef told his father, Yaakov said, "Will your mother and I and your brothers bow down to you?" But deep inside, Yaakov wondered what the dreams could mean. One day, Yosef's brothers were tending the flock far from home. Yaakov sent Yosef to find them. As he approached, his brothers saw him in the distance. "Look, the dreamer is coming," they whispered, and their hearts were filled with anger. "Let's kill him and throw him into a pit. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the eldest, said, "No, do not shed blood. Let us throw him into this empty pit instead." So they grabbed Yosef, tore off his kedonet pasim, and threw him into a deep dark pit. Then they sat down to eat. As they ate, a caravan of Ishmaelites passed by, traveling to Mitzrayim, Egypt. Then Yehuda had an idea. What profit is there in killing our brother? Let's sell him instead. So they pulled Yosef out of the pit and sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Yosef was taken far away into the land of Egypt. His brothers dipped his coat in the blood of a goat and brought it to their father. Yaakov wept, "My son, Yosef is gone." But Yahweh had a plan. Though Yosef was a slave in Egypt, one day his dreams would come true. Now remember, Yosef had been sold as a slave, taken by the Yishmaelim into Mitzrayim, Egypt. There he was sold to Potiphar, a captain of Pharaoh's guard. Though he was far from his father, Yahweh was with him. Everything Yosef did, Yahweh caused to succeed. Potiphar saw this and placed Yosef in charge of his entire household. Yosef worked hard, and Yahweh blessed the house of Potiphar because of him. But there was trouble ahead. Potiphar's wife saw that Yosef was strong and handsome. Day after day she tried to tempt him, but Yosef refused. "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against Elohim?" he said. One day, when no one else was in the house, she grabbed his robe and tried to pull him close. Yosef pulled away and ran, but she kept his robe in her hands. When Potiphar returned, she lied. She said, "This Hebrew slave tried to harm me. When I screamed, he ran away, but he left his robe behind." Potiphar was angry and threw Yosef into prison. But even in prison, Yahweh was with him. The prison keeper saw that Yosef was wise and trustworthy, and he put him in charge of the other prisoners. And there, Yosef met two men. One was Pharaoh's mashkeh, cupbearer. The other was Pharaoh's ofei, baker. One night, they both had troubling dreams. In the morning, Yosef saw their faces and asked, "Why are you sad today?" The cupbearer said, "I had a dream, but no one can interpret it." Yosef said, "Interpretations belong to Elohim. Tell me your dream." The cupbearer said, "In my dream, there was a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and its grapes ripened. I took the grapes, pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in his hand." Yosef said, "This is the meaning. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. You will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand once more." The cupbearer was relieved. Then the baker said, "Tell me my dream too." He said, "In my dream, I had 3 baskets of bread on my head, but the birds came and ate the bread from the baskets." Yosef's face grew serious. "This is the meaning. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, but you will not live." And it happened just as Yosef had said. 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, he restored the cupbearer, but the baker was taken away. Before the cupbearer left, Yosef said, "Remember me when you are free. Speak of me to Pharaoh so that I may be released." But the cupbearer forgot Yosef, and Yosef remained in prison, waiting. But Yahweh had not forgotten him. Yosef had waited. Years had passed since he was thrown into prison. The mashkeh, the cupbearer, had been freed, just as Yosef had said. But he had forgotten Yosef. Until one night, Pharaoh had a dream. In his dream, he stood by the Yor, the Nile River. 7 healthy, fat cows came up from the river, grazing in the reeds. Then 7 thin, sickly cows came up after them, and the thin cows ate the fat cows, but they remained just as thin as before. Pharaoh awoke, troubled. Then he fell asleep again and had another dream. This time, he saw 7 full ears of grain growing from a single stalk. But then 7 thin, dry ears sprouted after them, and the thin ears swallowed up the full ears. In the morning, Pharaoh's spirit was troubled. He called for his chartumen, magicians, and wise men. But no one could tell him what the dreams meant. Then the cupbearer remembered. He said, "Pharaoh, today I remember my sins. There was a young Hebrew in prison who interpreted my dream, and it came true. Perhaps he can interpret your dreams too." Pharaoh called for Yosef immediately. They hurried him out of the prison, washed him, and gave him fresh clothes. When Yosef stood before Pharaoh, he said, "I have heard that you can interpret dreams." Yosef answered, "It is not in me, but Elohim will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks." Pharaoh told Yosef the dreams. Yosef listened carefully. Then he said, "Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. Elohim has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 fat cows and 7 full ears of grain are 7 years of plenty. The 7 thin cows and 7 dry ears are 7 years of famine. There will be 7 years of great abundance in Mitzrayim, but after them 7 years of famine will come, and the land will suffer greatly." The reason Pharaoh had 2 dreams is because the matter has been decided by Elohim, and he will soon bring it to pass. Pharaoh was silent, thinking. Then Yosef said, "Let Pharaoh choose a wise and discerning man to store grain during the 7 good years, so that there will be food in the years of famine." Pharaoh looked at his servants. "Can we find anyone like this man, in whom is the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of Elohim?" Then Pharaoh turned to Yosef and said, "Since Elohim has made all this known to you, there is no one as wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall obey your word. Only in the throne will I be greater than you." Then Pharaoh took his tabat, his signet ring, off his hand and placed it on Yosef's hand. He dressed him in fine linen, placed a gold chain around his neck, and made him ride in a chariot. And the people bowed before him, saying, "Avraham, bow the knee." And so Yosef, who had once been a slave, a prisoner, forgotten, was now second in command over all of Mitzrayim. Yosef had been lifted from the prison to the palace. Pharaoh placed his tabat, a signet ring, on Yosef's hand, dressed him in fine linen, and gave him the second chariot of Mitzrayim. Wherever Yosef went, men called out, "Avraham, bow the knee." And Pharaoh said to him, "No one will lift a hand or foot in all the land without your command." Pharaoh also gave Yosef a new name, Zephanath Paneah, meaning Elohim speaks and he lives. And he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of a priest. Yosef was 30 years old when he began his work. For the next 7 years, Yosef gathered the grain from the land. The fields produced an abundance, more than ever before. He stored it in great storehouses, keeping some in every city until it was impossible to measure. And just as Elohim had shown, after the years of plenty came the years of famine. The rain stopped, the fields dried, the river shrank, and soon there was no food left in the land. The people of Mitzrayim came to Pharaoh, crying, "Give us food or we will die." And Pharaoh said, "Go to Yosef, do whatever he tells you." So the people came to Yosef, and Yosef opened the storehouses and sold grain to all of Mitzrayim. But the famine was not just in Mitzrayim, it spread to all the lands around. And soon, people from every nation traveled to Mitzrayim, searching for food. Among them were Yosef's brothers, but they did not know that the one who controlled the grain, the one who ruled over all of Mitzrayim, was their own brother, the one they had sold and forgotten. The famine had spread far beyond Mitzrayim. In the land of Canaan, Yaakov and his sons were running out of food. One day, Yaakov said to his sons, "I have heard that there is grain in Mitzrayim. Go down and buy some, so that we may live and not die." So 10 of Yosef's brothers traveled to Mitzrayim. But the youngest, Binyamin, stayed behind, for Yaakov was afraid to lose him. The brothers arrived in Mitzrayim and came before the governor, the man in charge of all the grain. They bowed down before him, their faces to the ground. They did not know that this great ruler was their own brother. But Yosef knew them, and he remembered his dreams. Yosef's heart pounded, but he did not reveal himself. Instead, he spoke sternly. "Where have you come from?" They answered, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." But Yosef said, "You are spies. You have come to see where the land is weak." "No, my lord," they protested. "We are honest men. We are 12 brothers, the sons of one father. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father in Canaan." Yosef said, "Then I will test you. If you are truthful, one of you will stay here while the rest return home. Bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be proven true." Then Yosef had them placed in prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day, he said, "Do this, and you will live. I fear Elohim. Leave one brother here, take grain for your families, and return with your youngest brother." The brothers spoke among themselves, not knowing Yosef could understand them. "This is because of what we did to Yosef," they said. "We saw his distress, but we did not listen, and now we are being repaid for his blood." Yosef turned away and wept. Then he took Shimon and had him bound before their eyes. He ordered their sacks to be filled with grain, but secretly he had their silver placed back inside their sacks. The brothers left for home. On the journey, one of them opened his sack and found his silver inside. Terror filled their hearts. "What has Elohim done to us?" When they arrived home, they told Yaakov everything. But when they said they must bring Binyamin back with them, Yaakov shook his head. "My son will not go down with you. His brother is dead, and if harm comes to him, I will go to my grave in sorrow." But as the famine worsened, the food ran out again. And Yaakov told his sons to return to Mitzrayim. Yehudah spoke firmly. "The man warned us, 'You shall not see my face unless your youngest brother is with you. Send Binyamin with us, and I will take responsibility for him.' Yaakov sighed. "If it must be so, take gifts for the man: balm, honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, and almonds. And take double the silver, for perhaps it was an oversight. And may El Shaddai grant you mercy before the man." Then he let Binyamin go, and so they returned to Mitzrayim. When Yosef saw his youngest brother, his heart filled with emotion. He told his steward, "Bring this man into my house and prepare a meal." The brothers were afraid. "Why have we been brought here?" they whispered. "Is it because of the silver that was found in our sacks?" When they arrived at Yosef's house, they bowed before him once more. Yosef asked, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke?" They said, "Yes, our father is alive and well." Then Yosef looked at Binyamin. "Is this your youngest brother?" He could barely hold back his tears. "Elohim be gracious to you, my son." But he hurried out of the room and wept. After washing his face, he returned and told them to eat. They sat before him, astonished that they had been seated in order of their birth. Then Yosef gave Binyamin 5 times more food than the others. The next morning, he sent them on their way. But before they left, he told his steward, "Place their silver in their sacks, and place my silver cup in the sack of the youngest." As they left the city, Yosef's steward overtook them. He said, "Why have you repaid good with evil? The governor's silver cup is missing." The brothers were shocked. "Why would we steal from your master? If one of us has the cup, let him die, and we will all be your slaves." The steward searched their sacks, and in Binyamin's sack he found the silver cup. The brothers tore their robes in grief. They returned to Yosef's house and fell to the ground before him. Yosef said, "What have you done?" Yehudah stepped forward. "My lord, we cannot return to our father without Binyamin. If he does not return, our father will die of sorrow. Take me as a slave instead, but let the boy go home to his father." Yosef could not hold back his tears any longer. He sent all the Egyptians out of the room, and then he wept aloud. "I am Yosef. Is my father still alive?" His brothers were speechless, afraid. But Yosef said, "Come near to me." They stepped closer. "I am Yosef, your brother, whom you sold into Mitzrayim. But do not be afraid. It was not you who sent me here, but Elohim. He sent me ahead of you to preserve life. There will be 5 more years of famine, but Yahweh has made me a ruler over Mitzrayim, so that many may be saved." Then he embraced Binyamin, and they wept together. He kissed each of his brothers, and they wept with him. Yosef sent them back to Canaan with gifts, and Pharaoh told them, "Bring your father and your families. You will dwell in the best of the land." When the brothers returned home and told Yaakov, he could not believe it. But when he saw the wagons Yosef had sent, his spirit revived, and he said, "My son Yosef is alive. I will go and see him before I die." And so Yaakov gathered his family, 70 in all, and traveled to Mitzrayim. When they arrived, Yosef went out to meet his father, and when he saw him, he fell upon his neck and wept for a long time. And Yaakov said, "Now I can die in peace, for I have seen your face, and you are alive." Yaakov and his family had settled in Mitzrayim, in the land of Goshen. There they lived in peace, under the protection of Yosef. But Yaakov was now very old. His strength was fading, and he knew his time was near. So he called for Yosef and said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, swear to me that you will not bury me in Mitzrayim. Carry me back to the land of my fathers and bury me with them." And Yosef swore to do as his father wished. Then word came to Yosef, "Your father is sick." So Yosef brought his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to see him. Yaakov sat up in bed and said, "Yahweh appeared to me in Luz and blessed me. And now your 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, are mine, as Reuben and Shimon are mine." Then Yaakov stretched out his hands, but instead of placing his right hand on the head of the older son, Manasseh, he placed it on the younger, Ephraim. Yosef tried to move his hands, saying, "Not so, my father. The firstborn is Manasseh." But Yaakov refused. "I know, my son, I know. Manasseh will be great, but his younger brother will be greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations." And so he blessed them, saying, "May Elohim make you as Ephraim and Manasseh." Then Yaakov called all his sons together. He gathered them around his bed, and one by one he spoke words over each of them. To Reuben, his firstborn, he said, "You are my might, my strength, but you will not have the first place, for you were reckless." To Shimon and Levi he said, "You are fierce in anger. May my soul not be joined with your wrath." To Yehudah he said, "Yehudah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. This scepter will not depart from Yehudah until the one comes to whom it belongs." To Zebulun he said, "You will dwell by the sea and be a haven for ships." To Yisachar he said, "You are strong, like a donkey bearing burdens, dwelling in the land of rest." To Dan he said, "Dan will be a judge among his people." To Gad he said, "A troop will overcome him, but he will overcome at last." To Asher he said, "Your bread will be rich, and you will yield royal delicacies." To Naphtali he said, "You are like a deer set free, speaking beautiful words." To Yosef he said, "Yosef is a fruitful vine. Though he was attacked, his arms remained strong, for Yahweh was with him." To Binyamin he said, "Binyamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours his prey. In the evening he divides the plunder." And so Yaakov blessed his sons, each according to their destiny. Then he said, "I am about to be gathered to my fathers. Bury me in the cave of Machpelah, where Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka and Leah are buried." Then Yaakov breathed his last, and he was gathered to his people. Yosef fell upon his father and wept. Then, as he had promised, Yosef and his brothers carried Yaakov back to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of Machpelah. And so the father of Israel was laid to rest, but his blessings lived on. Yaakov was gone. His sons had buried him in the land of Canaan, just as he had asked. Now Joseph's brothers grew afraid. They whispered among themselves, "What if Yosef still holds a grudge against us? Now that our father is gone, he may take revenge." So they sent a message to Yosef, saying, "Before our father died, he commanded us to tell you, 'Please forgive your brothers for the wrong they did to you.'" Then they bowed before Yosef and said, "We are your servants." Yosef looked at them, and his heart softened. He wept. Then he said, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of Elohim? What you intended for harm, Yahweh intended for good, to save many lives. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your families." And Yosef comforted them with kind words. Many years passed. Yosef grew old, and he knew his time was near. He called his family close and said, "I am about to die, but Yahweh will surely visit you and bring you out of this land, to the land he promised to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov." Then Yosef made the children of Israel swear, saying, "When Yahweh visits you, you must carry my bones from this place." And Yosef breathed his last, and he was gathered to his people. But even in death, his heart remained with the promise of Yahweh. For one day, his descendants would leave Mitzrayim and walk into the land of promise. Laila Tov, little one, sleep in his everlasting faithfulness. Shalom.